Let's see, has he gone on air?
Yeah, we're live.
Live. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Well, hello everybody. Listening. Let us know in the comment box on the side that you're here. Say hello. Say where you're from. I'm Eva Brandt. I'm one of the directors from Ultimate Artist. And really welcome to our Ultimate Artist webinar. We've done, if you followed us, a series of webinars. We started off with something about management. We've done live auditioning. We've done harmonies and vocal arrangements. And today, I'm very pleased to introduce producer, songwriter extraordinaire, and we'll be talking about song production. Song production is one of the things that we offer at our Ultimate Artist Summer Camp. It is a module that Amir and I run together. It is super cool. We get everybody making music, we get everybody creative and producing tracks and songs during the week. So welcome, Amir. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got into production, and yeah, just say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name's Amir. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Eva. My name's Amir Yakub. I'm an engineer, producer, and a songwriter. And as Eva said, I've been fortunate enough to join the UA team 2 years in a row now on song production. It's always been a blast, and we've had such a good time. My background was, I always studied music ever since, I guess, school. But I studied it all the way up until doing my master's, and then I came out and I didn't do anything to do with music for a couple of years until I started working at one of the biggest studios in London, Metropolis Studios, and started working as an intern there. I, was getting coffees and cleaning toilets and getting sandwiches and all of this kind of stuff. And then I worked my way into being an assistant engineer, where I was helping out on sessions and recording people and so on and so forth. And I was fortunate enough to bump into quite a few famous people, and fortunate enough to work with them musically. And for a good period of time, I spent a lot of time working on these kind of sessions at Metropolis, and then I went freelance after a little while, and concentrating more on production and writing and stuff like that. And kind of here I am. This is where I'm at in my journey.
Wow. Okay, that sounds really cool. Tell me a little bit about you're mentioning Metropolis. Tell me, what is Metropolis, and what's the sort of setup there in terms, I know it's a recording studio, but for people out there, maybe just tell us a little bit about how a big commercial studio works.
So yeah, as you say, they are a commercial studio based in West London. They have 4 main studios, and so that's 2 what they call recording studios with live rooms, studios A and B, and then they have studios E and C, which are mix rooms, all with massive consoles and loads of outboard equipment, preamps and compressors, and loads of selections of microphones and stuff like that. And they're also well known for all of their mastering services as well. And they do other stuff, they've got a publishing department, they've got a record label, all of this kind of stuff kind of going on. So yeah, they're a big commercial studio, one of the biggest in I think in all of Europe. And so working in an atmosphere like that was obviously very inspiring. It's a beautiful building as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds really cool. Now, you mentioned something about meeting some cool people and meeting, some famous people too. I find that often when I meet people who are experienced in the business, that is something they always talk about, this thing that the network was really the thing that got them into the next step in their career. But I also can find that a bit well, it could be a bit vague when you're starting out and you think, well, yeah, sure, but how does that happen? So just come back to your journey a little bit, and when you sort of meeting these cool people, tell us a little bit about the sort of starting up and the networking that you had to do or did when you were, at college and then started out.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it back to the time when I was being educated, I guess, or I was in education, one of the things that I had around me was a lot of talented people. And so, I play instruments and stuff like that, but there'd always be a better keys player than me, or, someone who's better at arranging vocals or whatever. And I kind of used them and their talent, and we'd kind of bounce off each other and vibe off each other. And, we'd all go and support each other as well. If, a band, my mate was in a band, and if he had a gig, I'd go and see that. And, they'd come and see us, and so on and so forth. So always had access to a lot of talented people. And most of the time, even though these guys were, I guess you could call them my peers, I'd always try and be respectful and professional when dealing with them in the context of music, and when we work together musically. And so naturally, I guess the progression is that when you get put into an environment where you are meeting music professionals, and they're more famous than the people that you were at college with, you learn to take that skill set over with you, and you learn to kind of treat them in the same way, with the same respect, and understand obviously that they're doing a job, and it's them singing or whatever is as much a job to them as you being an engineer is to you. And so, all of that kind of education, or that experience at least, came in very handy when dealing in a relationship, or in relationships with those people.
Cool. Well, that means, yeah, it sounds very much like the network that you created through your education was really important for your next step. Now, let's go back then a little bit before that. So what made you decide to go and study? Was it music technology, or what was your course called?
At uni, I did music production.
Production, okay. So just go back like a little bit before that. Sort of what made you decide that that was the right thing to do? How did you decide? Well, basically, do you think that it's important to go to college to study, or do you think we can make it into the industry without?
I mean, there's so many different paths, and everyone has, their own path and their own journey into the music industry. I've got as many friends in the industry now who have been through education that haven't, and so it kind of evens out. I think, for me personally, one thing that I kind of realized was that I couldn't do anything else. And so it wasn't that I wasn't skilled enough, clever enough to do anything. You have to be very clever to do some of this stuff anyway. But it was almost like I didn't think anything else would quite fulfill me or quite satisfy me. And so I went on to education in music production, particularly, to learn about the things that I loved the most and learn how to create or recreate those kind of special things that I'd heard on, Stevie Wonder records or Michael Jackson records, or anything that I loved musically. And I think that was the thing, really.
Okay, well, that brings me on to something that I want to sort of talk a little bit about, and that is gear, basically, or what was the first thing that you were able to produce on? What sort of got you, I know for myself personally, having been a musician, what it was that suddenly made the turn into doing production, and that happened to be a piece of hardware, a sampler called an MPC. And for me to first time just get into being able to transfer the ideas I had musically onto something that I could then record and chop into little pieces and make a track, out of. That was just the most exciting thing. And I thought, God, that is the coolest thing. I want to learn more about this. What about you? What was the thing that that sort of got you hooked, let's say, from music into the sort of more production electronic side?
Well, firstly, the fact that you had an MPC as your first piece of gear, that's pretty amazing. But
it's showing off.
it's incredible.
Still have it.
Well, you need to lend it to me. No, my first piece of gear was actually a computer. It was a PC, and I bought the PC loaded with Cubase, and that was the first time I actually got to create music. I'd kind of used something similar to that previously at school. But when I got to college, it was Cubase, and yeah, it was quite an experience to go, oh, you can record a vocal, and then you can kind of play this MIDI keyboard, and it'll be like a piano sound, or if you want it to be a drum sound, it can be a drum sound. And that's kind of how all of that stuff started to fit together in my brain, and I started to flesh out all of these kind of songs and arrangements and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important, well, for people starting out now, you know, oh God, you don't know how lucky you are in some sense, because my goodness, there were so many things that we had to do that just took a long time to do. You had to very sort of, at the MPC, for instance, to give an example, you had to store everything on a floppy disk. And
that's right.
if you know what a floppy disk is now, you don't really see them around. But they, it's like you store 1.4 megabytes on a floppy disk. Now that today is, you can't even have a kick drum sample. Most samples are even bigger than that. So you really had to all the time kind of think about how not to run out of space. Creatively, that also meant that you made some decisions that were, you know, based on that. But today things are a lot easier in terms of both storing, saving, transferring, sharing your things. And I think maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. So in terms of going into college, in your case, and then into the studio, what was it like when you started in the studio? What were you working on in places like Metropolis? What kind of setups did they have?
So yeah, I mean, when I first got to Metropolis, it was really an eye-opening experience. At the time that I was at where I studied, Leeds College of Music, we'd use like small 24-channel digital desks, and you know, it would be cool and everything, but then you walk into, you know, Studio A, and they've got an SSL console there, just like this beast, kind of like you know, the control of a spaceship, and you almost feel intimidated. But you know, one of the engineers there, he broke it down to me very simply, and he said, this one channel, there's 48 of these, and they all exactly the same. They just, everyone looks exactly the same. Every channel strip looks exactly the same. And all you need to know is where is the signal going and what do you want to do to it. And I found that reassuring, because you know, it was, I mean, they're beautiful consoles, and they are very inspiring when you walk into a room with a console that big, because it's what you see, you know, in the music videos and in the pictures and all of this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But also very daunting if you don't understand it. And so it was good to have someone there who went, actually, don't be worried about this. This is actually a lot more simple than you think it is. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about the studio environment then, because I think that what you're mentioning in terms of just having one friend there, somebody who's, you know, available to answer your questions when you're starting out, because it can be very intimidating and overwhelming. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of, what I would call the old school way of starting out. So say I didn't go to college, or like in your case, you did go to college and then went into the studio environment afterwards. What is normally the sort of procedure if I'm lucky enough to get a job in a studio?
Well, obviously, one thing you have to do is you have to start at the bottom, because there's a ladder and you need to climb that ladder, and there's people ahead of you. It's actually a really good way to learn about the music industry in general. You won't shoot to fame overnight or whatever. It will be a process, and that process is instilled in you. So when I entered Metropolis, I actually didn't work as an intern. I worked as a night receptionist, and so I would cover the front desk for 16 hours overnight. And so from 6 in the evening until 10 in the morning, I'd be there picking up any phone calls that came. Who calls at that time in the night? Not many people, apart from people from LA who want to book a studio. Ordering cabs, food, all of that kind of stuff. I was then in the door, and I got speaking to some of the studio engineers, and they saw that I was basically enthusiastic, and that I had some sort of knowledge, and you know, they know that I'd studied, but more so I think they liked my character, and then I got asked by I can't remember if it was the studio manager or the chief engineer, would you like to intern for a bit or become a runner, as they're known here. And so I agreed to do that, and I was runner for about 9 months, I think it was. And at that point, that was when I was closer to the studios, but I still wasn't in the studios. Like, so there'd be clients in the studios, but I wouldn't be allowed to go in to the session when the clients were there. But I'd be getting their coffees and getting food for them, and you know, all of that kind of stuff, and generally helping out around the studio. So if you know, there was this, you know, a spillage somewhere, I'd clean that up, or clean toilets or whatever, you know, do whatever you need to do, muck in basically. After that period, I got picked up by an engineer who took a liking to me and my attitude, and I got to assist him as an assistant engineer on his sessions. And so then that was when it really started. I was in the room at the same time as clients. And
okay, so just tell me a little bit about being an assistant then, because you know that is, you know, an exciting role, and well done for getting there, you know, with your tenacious attitude. But what does the assistant do?
Well, the assistant is kind of like a really helpful ghost. And so what happens is you are there, but you're not there. So your main priority is to be an extension of the engineer. So if the engineer needs something done, as in a cup of tea, or it needs you to patch in a certain piece of hardware or whatever, or needs you to set up a session for him on Pro Tools or whatever, that's your job. When the engineer is doing their work, and when the client is in, you're then serving the client, making sure that they're all taken care of, and you know, everything's good for them. Aside from that, you are basically just to keep yourself to yourself, sit there at the back of the room, stay calm, and if anything is needed, you're called into action. Yeah.
And awake.
And awake, yeah.
Calm and awake.
Yeah, calm and awake helps.
Okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about microphones, for instance. So would you be setting up the microphones in the live room and getting ready? So you would be looking after the musicians in the live room, for instance? Yeah,
so as an assistant engineer, you're obviously responsible for taking the mic selection. If you're, say it was a band, taking the mic selection that the engineer has chosen for that session, setting it all up, setting up on drum kit, on the guitar amps, bass amp, and for the vocalist, and then responsible for helping with things like their headphones and their fold back and all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you are, like, again, an extension of the engineer whose job it is to concentrate on capturing the best sound that they can, whilst you obviously assist them.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. That, you know, gives me a really sort of clear idea of what it's inside, like inside the studio. Now, Amir, I can't actually see the chat for any listeners. Can you just have a look and see if anybody has said hello? If you're listening now, can you just write something in the comment box and just let Amir know that you're there, you're listening in. If you've got any questions, please let us know, because we're keen to get through everybody's questions in this time that we have. So any takers?
We've got Josephine. Josephine Grace, who says hi. Hello, Josephine. How are you? We've got Matthew, who says hey. Nika, who says hey up. Pauline, who says hi. Maria says hi. She just said hi.
Hi.
Chris says hey, hey. So yeah, we got some people out there, which is
Okay.
amazing. Matthew has a question.
Yeah.
What's the best production and sound engineering courses to take production to radio quality level? Good question.
That is a good question. We shall come back to that because I think we should talk a little bit about the role of the producer. So we've given you a bit of an introduction into what happens in the studio and obviously the role of the sound engineer. Now, in your case, you came from a sound engineer into producer role. Just tell us a little bit about that transition, the difference, you know, are you also a producer if you're a sound engineering and the other way around? How does that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, the lines are continually blurred when it comes to this kind of stuff. And, you know, all throughout university, I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to be responsible for all of that. But I also felt that I wanted more technical knowledge, which is one of the reasons why I kind of fell into, I didn't really fall into it, but I went into an engineering role because there were a lot of technical considerations. Now, I actually learned more about being a producer when I was an assistant engineer and engineer, because I'd work directly with producers and they would be doing things, their consideration was production. My consideration was engineering and the sound, and they might be thinking more about the song and the performances on the song. And so I actually learned loads about the role of being a producer by being an engineer. Okay,
so what I'm really curious about is, can you maybe use an example on a session? You don't have to tell us with who, but just tell us like a scenario of how the producer would be working on the recording of a track or an album. How would it work?
One producer that I worked with, he was exceptionally good at what he did. He was a multi-talented guy, great keys player, great songwriter, and also a really good vocalist. And what he would do is he would vocal produce a lot of the time, the vocalist. Now, at this time, him and the singer were only vocaling demos. But one of the things that he said was, what you need to do, he said this to the singer who was singing the demo, what you need to do is you need to make sure that when we put this in front of the artist, that singer, or that artist, sorry, will be able to hear themselves singing this, and they will take the song as a result of that. And I thought that was, you know, something that is overlooked when it comes to that kind of thing, because the song had a purpose, and that song was a demo to be pitched to an artist. And he actually led the direction and the purpose to the right place where it should have been, so no one was wasting their time, basically. And that was one experience which showed me the role of the producer actually as a very big picture role most of the time.
Okay. So if we're to talk about the qualities of the of the producer, would that be really to direct, you know, the singer, the track, the song, into something that is likely to get signed, get published, get put out, get taken up by the artist? Would you say that that's the main purpose?
Yeah, I'd say that's a very accurate way of describing the role of a producer. Obviously, the producer is responsible for the direction of the record, and in a sense that, you know, if you had a movie, you'd have a director of a movie. The producer is that for the song. But they also have to be able to obviously understand how parts fit together, how the musical landscape is, and how to just get the very best out of you know, anyone performing on that record, and to convey the message of the song a lot of the time, because, you know, it is, I mean, that's what sticks with a lot of people, is the actual song, and that performance is crucial. And so the producer's role is very much what I would say that is it.
Yeah, and I think, would you agree that sometimes the relationship that is the most important, but also the one that can break down, is that relationship between label, producer, and artist? And sometimes we hear these stories of labels finding a producer for a band or an artist that maybe has a different idea of the style that this artist or band should take, and then you start having this real conflict of interest where the band might be saying, well, this is not really the product that I was hoping to make, even with their own songs, and the producer's there frustrated under pressure from the label saying, well, you know, we hired this guy or girl because she has a particular sound that we want. Is that still something that you find happens in the industry?
Absolutely, 100%, and that's where good A&Ring comes in as well. So the A&R would be responsible for going, hey, we've got this artist. They're almost like the go-between between the artist and the label, but they also will reach out to the right producers on the project or for the project as well, and that's what a good A&R person will do. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that relationship between the producer and the artist and the label is something that makes or breaks a lot of artists, actually.
Okay, well, so then let's take it down a notch and just talk about self-producing and maybe finding a producer in your circle of network, or, you know, how do I go about that if I want to sort of really try and look at the songs that I've created or my ideas, and about if I want to try and sort of produce it?
Obviously, what we have available to us is we have many people who are producers, or have the ability to record, or have the ability to make instrumentals or whatever. Excuse me. And it's really about defining what you would like someone to do for you. So if, for instance, let's say, Eva, you came to me, you had a song, and you had an a cappella, and you had an a cappella of the song, I could record your vocals, and that would be great because, you know, I have Logic at home and I have a microphone and all of this kind of stuff. But then could I put the, I guess, the framing around that song that would make that song, you know, a quote unquote hit, or at least have the right musical landscape to convey this message of that song and the sentiment of that song well. Hopefully I could. However, maybe I'm not the right person for the job. And so therefore you might need to reach out to someone else to do that for you. So which means that you look for someone else.
Yeah, so the questions I'd need to ask you is, one, can I hear something that you've made? I guess I need to figure out, well, what's your style, what's your sound?
Exactly.
And then I guess I come to you because I like what I hear. How, as a producer, do you decide? Do you just say, right, you know, I like this artist, I really believe in this artist, this is my sound? Or, you know, tell us a little bit about the getting started. You know, I play you my song. What would you suggest? What's the sort of deal that we would be making as well? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, talking about deals. You'll have to speak to management about that stuff. No. So what would happen is, obviously, under a normal situation where you would approach, obviously I can only speak from personal perspective, is that I'd have to be into your voice and your musical style. But I'd also have to feel that you're going somewhere and that you are willing to put the work in to get ahead. Because I am not going to go 90% of the way for you to meet me 10% of the way. I want it to be a relationship where we are, you know, feeding off each other, and we are pushing each other, and we are trying to achieve things together. And that will translate to being in the studio together as well. And so, you know, you'll have some musical ideas. I'll have to bring those musical ideas to life. I'll have some ideas. You'll have to bring them to life for me, and all of this kind of stuff. And so that's kind of how the situation would look initially. There's got to be something inside of you that I feel is special. And then we talk about doing deals and stuff like that as well. So
okay. Yeah, but very true, because I think, I mean, that was probably you at UA talking about this, the time that you spend together, you know, because at the end of the day, you do not want to spend months, sometimes, you know, on end, late nights together with someone in the studio that you basically don't get on with.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, there's definitely a personal aspect to that, but also that attitude that, you know, yes, I've written this, look at this, isn't that great? Now here you go, make it magic. You know, like you say, there needs to be some more drive behind there.
Definitely.
You know, so there is, you know, meeting halfway.
Yeah, definitely.
So if I'm starting out either as a producer or as an artist, and I'm looking for somebody to work with, and we don't have management because we're not really there yet, we haven't really put anything out, don't you think that we should be talking about some kind of deal arrangement? What would your suggestion be? What are the sort of places to start, you know?
Some of the things to consider when it comes to deals and such, when you don't have for instance, a management or a label involved or anything like that, is who owns what. And, you know, we went over this kind of stuff in UA as to the copyrights available. So that's the copyright for the song, or the composition, and the copyright of the master recording or the sound recording. And who owns what in terms of that kind of stuff, because essentially the reason that you'd want to have a contract in the first place is to protect each other. And so what would happen is, you know, none of you can walk away from this having wasted your time entirely. And so as much as, if you were an artist, Eva, as much as I want the best for you, I'd also want the best for myself. And, you know, yeah, and you know, if a song went huge, which you can do overnight, and even if it wasn't you as an artist singing that song or releasing that song, and it was someone else, there would need to be a level of protection for both of us either way, because, you know, we could, you know, either of us could walk away, pretend that song's ours, give it off to someone else, and then make loads of money off it.
Yeah, so that's what when we talk about split sheets. And would you say is that, you know, a split sheet would be enough, or should we also make some, you know, contract of, is that a good idea for working, you know, just started out?
Yeah, I mean, split sheets are definitely something that's definitely going to happen. So split sheets, for anyone who doesn't know, would be who owns what of the composition or of the song, which is the melody and the lyrics. And so if Eva and I were working, it might be we just went easy, simple, 50-50. And that's that portion of the song. The master recording or the sound recording would be something different. And some artists want to own their own sound recordings. But then, Eva, if you've come to my studio to record, that's all my gear, my equipment, my time. And I might have a claim to say, hey, you can't own this sound recording because it was done in my studio on my time. And it would be up to me to negotiate with you, or you to negotiate with me, whichever way around, as to who owns that, or if we both partially own that or not. So yeah, that split sheets is one thing, but having the ownership or the split of the ownership of the master recording is also another thing as well to be considered.
Yeah, and that's where you would be talking about producer points. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So yeah, so that would be on the sales.
Okay, well, listen, Amir, just have another check on the list and see if we can get a little bit of feedback from the people who are listening in. We'll be starting to talk about college courses that you might consider and any other questions that you have.
Yeah, I've got a question from Barjat here, who says, from your
Hi, Bajad.
From your experience in witnessing vocal production sessions or even doing it yourself, what would you say are the top 3 tips that are given to singers to help to get the most out of their delivery? And I've got another one come up from Chris. Maybe we'll deal with the Barjat one first.
Yeah, okay, let's talk a little bit about vocal production. I think that's probably relevant for most of our listeners, and most certainly something that we address when at UA. We love working with vocals. A lot of the things that I do in my studio is working with singers and vocal productions. And yeah, well, let's just go a little bit into the sort of the details about that. So just talk a little bit about how you produce vocals. What are the things that you look out for, Amir?
Okay, so top 3. I don't know if I've got 3, but I'll give you as many as I can. Number 1 is positivity, and so there's no point in having a singer or working with a singer, should I say, if you're just going to bash them over the head and say, "Oh, it sounds rubbish. You need to do that again. You're singing out of key." All of this kind of stuff, right? You need to be very encouraging and very positive. Now, obviously, as in your role as a producer, you also need to know when to stop doing something as well. So if you can hear quite clearly that the singer is getting tired, or they're not in the zone, or they're all up in their feelings about something, they sound like they might start crying or whatever, then you need to remove them from that situation and, I don't know, go for a walk, grab a cup of coffee, and come back and tackle it one more time, or even on another day if you need to. So those are 2 things, and 3, get the most out of their delivery. Connection. This is probably one of the biggest things that I feel will give you the most or the greatest performances. That is to connect with the song. And so one of the things that you need to have when you're having a vocal session is the goosebump factor, or at least believability. And so, you know, me and Eva have sat in sessions as well, and this happened at UA this year, and you know, a singer will sing a note or sing a line or something like that, and instantly all up your arm, goosebumps, and you know you've got it, you know it's done, you know it sounds great because your body just told you that. And to have that level of believability and connection with a song is probably actually the most important thing.
Yeah,
so it's encouraging that.
Very, very good point. So that was your 3, wasn't it? I'm going to be a little bit I'm going to be a little bit nerdy and talk about actually technical aspect of good sound. Good sound.
Okay.
If you can give the singer a really good fallback sound in their headphones, where they have a good mix between the sound on the microphone, they can hear themselves really clearly, maybe with a bit of reverb, and then they can hear the track nice and clear as well. So to really work on getting that balance for the singer before you've got to start recording, just so that they can really feel that they can be in that personal environment where they can then 3 points of really connecting and feeling confident and communicating well with you. Your fallback mix, for instance, unless the singer is with you in the room where you can directly, making sure that when you then press the button to the live room that your voice is not coming through really, you know, screeching and in a way destroying that kind of vibe and that connection. So those are things that are really, before you have a singer coming over to your studio, to really make sure that you go and you check the microphone and you really kind of put yourself in that place where they're going to be and where they're going to be creative, and you know, think about the lighting, think about, you know, just making it really nice and cozy. But I find that if you can get the sound right, then the thing I can really get into that zone straight away. So those
Yeah.
are my, I think that's at least what I really aim to try and get that as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I completely agree with all of those points, actually.
And sometimes, you know, if you are in two different rooms and you can feel that suddenly you're losing that connection, losing the vibe, leave the room, leave the control room, go into the live room, just, you know, headphones off, just have a little chat, and put yourself in the space with them. So those are little tips. And then you go, hey, and by the way, it's sounding fantastic. You know, let's do it one more time.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah,
very good advice.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. If you just look at the list, and
we've got Matthew's question from before, and so shall we? We'll take Matthew's question.
Yeah, so let's talk about colleges and doing what was the question again about finding a course?
Yeah, what's the best production and sound engineering courses to take production to radio quality level?
Okay, well, we're not sort of, I guess, here to sort of endorse particular courses in, you know, obviously we're both in London. I'm not sure where you are, Matthew. But my advice to students, and this is something I find a lot when I work for Rock School as well, is that question, where is the best course? I find I always just advise you to go there, go on the open day, and yes, see what's there, see what equipment's there, but talk to the students more than anything. Really use your network and find out, you know, go on Facebook, any students of this place, you know, so just do some research, and there are always some top, you know, that comes up, but it's just then to really do, so, you know, before you sign up for a course, I always recommend you go there and talk to the tutors. And because a little bit like what we're saying about being in a studio session, don't sign up to a course if you get the feeling that you're not really going to get on with the tutor, because it's just that, you know, I think the tutor will in many cases become your future mentor. You know, a lot of people who work in colleges are willing to take, you know, go out of their way to give you a little bit of extra advice and everything. So really try and see, well, what's the vibe in this place, and most importantly, talk to the students. So what, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously, I looked at a few places when I was studying, which was, you know, a little while ago now. And I did go and visit all of those places, and I went with, you know, the place that suited me the best in terms of what kind of musical history they've got, what kind of equipment they've got, how their course is structured, of course, and, you know, just what the general vibe and atmosphere was around the university. Obviously, since then, I visited other institutions as well, and I've been impressed by all of them, just on different levels and in different disciplines. And so, yeah, obviously, the highly recommended ones are probably the best ones, but you won't know. It's like, you know, you wouldn't buy a jacket and not try it on. You need to go and try on these places and see how they fit you.
Yeah, and I think the clearer you are as well with what it is that you want to learn, so you know, producing a song to radio level, well, that's quite a specific target and aim, which is really good, and well done for identifying that. And then that is then something to really go, well, what are, you know, where can I go and find out which course would be offering me, you know, to learn those skills. I mean, I think today there is really, it's something that a lot of colleges and university have really caught on to, that they should be working more with commercial music, and they should be offering more university. When we started out, I think you agree, Amir, there was really just a handful of places to look at, where now there is really a place in nearly every town, you know, all across the UK. And I think it's like looking at, you know, money for value. You know, it can be a big investment to go and spend maybe up to $9 grand a year to do a course. So I guess it's also asking yourself what you want to do with it, because alternatively, there are also some short courses, like including UA, where you could go and get a real boost for, you know, just getting started and then creating a network, which might be just all you need.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you don't
Little
always need to
cheeky,
go through that.
little cheeky plug for UA, but that's, you know, looking into things that could be on a more sort of short term, you know,
of
and
course.
then you can still, you don't have to quit your day job just yet.
Of course, of course.
I have another look at the list. Any more questions?
So we've got Chris. Chris says, what's your opinion on collaborating with other producers? Good question.
Great question.
My opinion is that the more collaboration that you can have, the better. Because, you know, it goes back to what we said at the top of the conversation when we were talking about having a network, and having all of these people who might be, you know, great at different things or great at even similar things. But, you know, you get to get together with these people, you get to listen to music with them, you get to make music with them, you get to, you know, ask them how their dog is and all of this kind of stuff. And that's all something that's lost its way a little bit with the advent of, you know, the World Wide Web and all of that kind of stuff, is that we don't really have as much of a human connection as we used to. And so, you know, it's really good to collaborate with other people, because some people will be amazing at programming drums and some people will be amazing at doing vocal production, and you can always learn. You can always learn from other people. And so I would say that that is a very good thing to do.
Do you work with people mostly face to face, Amir, or do you have sessions coming in from abroad as well?
I do a few sessions from abroad, but I'm a face to face guy. I'm a face to face guy. I like to be in a room. I like to catch the vibe of the day. And, you know, I like to work face to face. That's definitely the way I like to do things.
Yeah, well, anyone who's worked with you know that that's the case, you know. And I think, you know, I think I would be the same. But, you know, I have had business coming from LA as well, and you know, and they can be really good if you're starting up your own studio. That can be really good sort of breadwinners to just be the person that they can send somebody, you know, the studio where they can send an artist in to record and you just send it over.
I absolutely agree.
So I've done a lot of tracking in my studio, which I then haven't actually, you just track it. They tell you which mic and setup they want. The artist comes in, they track it. You don't do anything production wise, you just track it, sound engineer it, send it over. So that's something, you know, if you can offer yourself like as a project studio space where, you know, then you can earn a little bit of money when you get started, and that can be really helpful.
Of course, many revenue streams in that sense. What else we got? Pauline says, excuse me, as a producer, do you feel producing a song depends on the sound of a moment that you hear on the radio? Good question. The short answer is no. Because I think that you should always be yourself, and that is what will differentiate you and make you stand out from the sound of the radio. If you think of all of your favorite artists, they're the ones that are probably the most unique. For instance, let's take two female singers who are both pop artists, Rihanna and Beyonce. Both different artists, but both successful, talented, and they have their own lane, and, you know, they haven't tried to copy anyone or do anything like that, and they haven't tried to chase or catch up with the sound of the radio, and most of the time they reinvent the sound of the radio when they bring out a new album. So yeah, the short answer is no. What would you say, Eva?
Well, I'm just thinking about how some styles have come out of actually certain limitations in the producer's musical abilities. You know, the fact that they, you know, when we had the whole sort of in the 90s, you started really getting the house scene going, which then went into, well, hip hop for that sake as well, but grime, dubstep, which really came with, you know, producers who weren't necessarily playing instruments themselves, but were very much sort of recycling and using things that they that was already made, and then suddenly you were creating a completely new sound, and interesting to, you've got to, when you're starting out, I think, really try and listen to what is going on. But interestingly enough, it's often, you know, I was going to say the kids out there that are just kind of making the new sound and are completely oblivious really to the maybe wider picture, you know, who are just there creating. So I think we all have to be really careful that we're not looking too much over each other's shoulders and trying to copy things, and just do something, mash something up, you know, put something together. But like cooking a dish, you know, and then don't overcook it, you know, just try and do something that sounds fresh.
Absolutely, and I'd say, just to add to that as well, allow it to inspire you, but not to overly influence you. I think that's probably an important thing to do. Like you know, a Rihanna would be inspired by Beyonce, but it wouldn't overly influence her to change her sound to try and chase that kind of sound. So yeah, I'd say that's another thing to do. Bajat's got another question. As a singer-songwriter, sometimes I feel like I get stuck in the same zone in terms of melodies and lyrics. How do you make sure you keep your ideas and style fresh? Eva, I'm gonna ask you to answer this one, because you had some cool tricks up your sleeve when we were doing UA this year.
Yeah. So what are the things you can do? You caught me out there. It's just now you're getting some time to think about it yourself. I would say you've got to think about the structure of your song. Yeah. So, you know, the good old trick is to say that, you know, you've got your A, B, you know, you've got verse, chorus. What happens in the bridge? What are the things that can happen? And really start kind of looking at that bridge part, which can then maybe become, you know, new kind of zone that the song goes into. I often find when I'm working that bridge part can sometimes form a basis for a new song, you know. And sometimes when you sit and experiment with a song, you take it somewhere completely different. You then end up maybe even stripping that song back to where it was, and your bridge part becomes the new, you know, the new part. So I think it's really important that you allow yourself to improvise over things that you've already created. You know, that's that would be one way of doing it. So just kind of having a little jam with yourself. You know, you put something together and you go over it and you go, well, where can that go? For learning some music theory, I don't know if you already play an instrument, but the more you're able to know where something could go. I mean, we were fortunate enough this year to work with an amazing MD, musical director called Adam Rust, who's an incredible keyboard player. And we're also lucky to have him back this year. But just when you can see somebody really understand not just their instrument, but just a little bit of basic music theory, which means that, say you're working in a particular key structure, you know that, ooh, actually this chord could sound really corny or different, or it could take the vibe somewhere else. So I always say, you know, learn a bit of basic keyboard skills. It was actually one of the questions I wanted to cover. Do I need to produce music? And the answer is no. You can work with loops. You can manipulate things that are already made. You can sit and figure it out. But my goodness, if you can actually play the keyboard maybe more than anything, it's a really good help.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Amir, what do you want to add something?
I think for inspiration when you're stuck or experiencing writer's block, start somewhere else. And usually that means if you can play more than one instrument, instead of starting at the piano, go to the guitar. Or start somewhere else in terms of go somewhere else and write. Go to the park and sit down and on a bench and start humming some melodies. You might be inspired by the greenery or the birds, or you might be inspired by bird song. I'll tell you something interesting. I was working with an artist who once said to me, oh, hold on, I've got some ideas for melodies on my phone. I'm auto-tuning bird songs to get my melodic inspirations at the moment, and I thought that he was insane. But you know, that was his way of keeping things fresh and switching it up and so on and so forth. And so, you know, maybe even try that. Just record some birds singing and put it through auto tune.
Great.
There's
Great.
loads of ways. Loads of ways.
Yeah, great idea. I mean, we had this cool little slide that we went through at UA, which suddenly is starting to come back to me, which was just like, you know, overcoming writer's blocks, which was like write for a friend, right? You know, so give yourself a particular scenario, like Amir says, you know, where you are, taking yourself out of the situation where you are, you go and write somewhere else. But yeah, these babies are such powerful devices. You know, most of you will have a smartphone, whether it's Android or Apple, it will have a recording device. Use it when you're out. You know, I was lucky enough I did a master's in sonic arts, so I didn't do what Amir did, which was to study music production as such, but much later I came and did a composition course, which just inspired me to just think differently. And yes, I was the person auto-tuning but songs or recording trains and lowering the pitch, and if you can create your own little sound library on your phone and then get into putting that into a sampler. So just be a nerd. Don't always sit down in front of the computer feeling that you have to write something. Like I got my old saxophone out once and I sample every note. I spend a day playing, recording, chopping it up. And then I have used that saxophone for the last 10 years in so many productions. So that day that I spent putting everything together, being a real nerd, then gave me a really unique sound library that nobody else has. So I think that's really, really important to just go, today, I'm not writing, today I'm just, you know, editing or recording. So try that for a bit of inspiration.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay, so have another look, and maybe we're just about to wrap up in a few minutes. So just
we got some thanks. Pauline said thanks for the answer.
Great.
She said she loved the Be Yourself part. Matthew said thank you. I'm all booked for Sunday. Really looking forward to it.
Great, so, thanks for that, Matthew. Just a little plug for Sunday. You can experience the two of us for, you know, a good few hours, 7 hours, I think, in total, on Sunday, which is the 11th of December. It's at Whack Arts, which is in Hampstead, North London. Do come. There's still some places left. Bring your music. We will be talking more like this, but we'll also be really practical and listen to your songs and help you to see where it can go next. So please sign up.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone there. You know, it's going to be a great experience. It's always wonderful when me and Eva get in a room together to share our common knowledge and experience. So yeah, we are, well, I'm personally looking forward to it, and I know that Eva is as well. So it's going to be very, very cool. Very cool.
Any more questions? Like I said, sorry about, you know, it's a little bit glitch on my feed today, so I couldn't see your questions, guys, but I'm so pleased you're listening in. Just Amir, have another check that we haven't missed anything out.
Chris said, thanks, guys, really enjoyed it. Barjat said, thanks for answering my 2 questions for the webinar. It's a great initiative. Josephine says, always love hearing from you guys. Miss you. Hope to see you at UA again. We hope to see you too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and yeah, Pauline says thanks for the amazing webinar, and sorry she can't come on Sunday. That's all right. We'll have to let her off this time.
Yeah, we'll let you off, but keep writing, guys. You know, just and share. You know, share your music, get it out there. I would say another thing, just the last little tip is don't be too precious when you start out. Just you know, if it just sits there on the computer where, you know, it's not going to go anywhere else. Nobody else is going to be able to go, ooh, I want to do something with that. So just take a chance, you know, get your music out, play it to people, be proud of your creations, you know, and share them. So
yeah, I agree with that one. That's definitely one thing that you need to You need to just be pushing yourself and pushing your content out. And yeah, I'm sure all of it's pretty special anyway. So
great. Well, I can see someone else has just joined us.
That
This
looks
means
like a
that
little Joshua over there.
means that our time's up. So yeah, thanks again, guys. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys, and see you at the next webinar. God bless you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye-bye.